JMU football enters the 2024 season with kind of an entirely new look roster. The Dukes lost a ton to the portal and graduation. You can look at defense: Jalen Green, Jamry Chroma, James Carpenter, Aiden Fisher, Jalen Walker. The list kind of goes on with players that Mikael Kamara, right? That left the program and are moving either to the NFL and professional opportunities or different programs at the FBS level. We've also got offensively Jordan McLeod was the Sun Belt Player of the Year in 2023. He left for the portal. He's gone, although he hasn't announced a destination yet. Running backs, the Dukes lost some. They lost their three best receivers, including Elijah Surratt to Indiana, who was expected to be, if he didn't transfer, probably the best receiver in the Sun Belt. So the Dukes and Bob Chesney had a ton to replace on the roster. Obviously, Chesney also had to replace the coaching staff. Big offseason for him coming to Harrisonburg. He did a nice job in the portal. He added 21 guys in this first portal window. I think at least 12 of them have a chance to compete immediately for starting time. We'll take a look at 5 of them right now that I think are kind of, you can pencil them in now as starters, assuming they're healthy for the Dukes in 2024. So first up, you've got Dylan Morris, Washington transfer. He was the backup quarterback for the program in 2022 and 2023. A valuable experience for a team that played in the national title in 2023. I think some of that might be a little bit overblown, right? If you find a guy who played at a group of 5 school and has previous starting experience, he's probably just as capable of coming in as sort of a backup on a high-level Power 5 team. I think for Morris, what's most important is that he started for Washington in 2021. So different coaching staff than the coaching staff that was there in 2023 with Kalen DeBoer, who's now at Alabama. He wasn't learning from those same guys in 2021 when he started, but starting in the Pac-12, valuable experience for him. Threw for over 2,000 yards that season, 14 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, was productive. I think Washington fell short of expectations, but Morris did some nice things, and he should be able to do some nice things for the Dukes. He's really good in play action. He's good reading a defense. He has strong arm strength, good accuracy. He's not Jordan McLeod in terms of mobility, where he's not going to take off and scramble for 30 yards, but he can stretch the field as a passer, and he has enough pocket mobility where if it's a play action bootleg or something like that, he can avoid a defensive lineman, avoid a sack, and then look down the field to make a throw. So there is some mobility there. I think he can pick up the occasional first down with his legs, but it's not going to be like McLeod or Vadley or Teo or anything like that, where there's that elite level athleticism and running game from the quarterback spot. Fortunately for JMU, they added Ayo Adei, among others, at the running back spot who have a chance to really produce immediately. Adei had over 1,000 rushing yards last season for North Texas. He's averaged over 7 yards per carry for his career, especially the last 2 years. So he's been a phenomenal runner for North Texas the last couple seasons and had a good year in 2021 as well. Over 1,000 yards in the AAC should translate pretty immediately to the Sun Belt. He's not necessarily a workhorse back where I wouldn't expect him to have 20 carries a game or anything like that. But I think that 10 to 15 range is sort of a sweet spot for him. And then you can work in George Pettaway, a North Carolina transfer, some other players in the running game as well. They've got some options sort of at running back 3 and 4. But I think Adai is probably the top guy in the running back room. Would expect him to contribute immediately for JMU. Now, at receiver, the Dukes lost even more production. JMU had 2 guys go over 1,000 yards, Elijah Surratt and Reggie Brown. Phoenix Sproles had 500-ish yards, was very good in the slot. They've lost all 3 of those guys to either the portal or graduation and potentially the NFL. So the Dukes replaced them with Cam Ross, a UConn wide receiver who had 44 catches for 552 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. Ross is extremely productive. He's really good for the Huskies, who played several Power 5 teams last year. They also played JMU, where Ross had 4 catches for 91 yards. A good showing, even though UConn got blown out in that game. Ross figures to be a starter because they haven't added a ton else via the portal at wide receiver. They added some younger talent, some guys who are maybe a little less proven. But in terms of proven portal additions at wide receiver, it's basically just Cam Ross. So would expect him to start. They also returned some guys, Taji Hudson among them, who have a chance to start as well. But I think Ross is, you can kind of pencil him in as a starter as well and anticipate, if he's healthy, him being sort of a key contributor receiver. He did deal with injuries a little bit during his time at UConn. Defensively, I think the Dukes also made significant strides. They lost a ton, as we mentioned at the beginning, but they added Eric ONeal, who I'm extremely high on, a defensive lineman from Long Island. He's 6'3", 250. He looks like a Power 5 player. I think if he played at a higher level of the FCS, I think he would have gotten more interest from FBS programs outside of JMU in this portal season. But the Dukes, I think, lucked out. We're pretty fortunate to get him, to be honest. Really talented player. He was the NEC Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. He has multiple years of eligibility. Wouldn't be surprised after the 2024 season if Power 5 teams come calling, given the unlimited transfers at this point. But going into 24, Eric ONeal, likely starter, produced an extremely high level at Long Island. He had 44 tackles, 44 and a half tackles for loss over the last 2 years. And I think his production against NEC teams was pretty evident. He was dominant in conference. But what he really stands out to me for is his performance against Ohio in 2023. It's an Ohio team that was one of the best in the MAC. They won 10 games in 2023, including blowing out Georgia Southern in a bowl game. In that sort of early season game, ONeal had 13 tackles, which was a season high for him, including 3.5 tackles for loss. He was extremely disruptive against one of the most competent, I think, well-coached teams in the MAC. If ONeal can sort of maintain any of that type of production going to JMU, which I think he can, I think he'll be one of the best defensive players, not only in the Sun Belt, but the entire group of five. So he's a phenomenal pickup, a great one for the Dukes, as is Jacob Dobs at linebacker. The Holy Cross transfer is close with Bob Chesney. He's viewed as a leader on and off the field, which is valuable. And he's also just a great player. 123 tackles in 2023 for Dobbs. The Holy Cross transfer was really, really good for them coming off an injury in 2022. When he's healthy, he's one of the best defenders at the entire FCS level. Would expect that to translate well to the Sun Belt. Multiple seasons with over 100 tackles, 2023 defensive Patriot League Player of the Year. So they added a couple between ONeal and Dobbs, conference defensive player of the years. Both those guys have a chance to be really impactful in terms of racking up stats. Dobbs is likely the leading tackler for the Dukes in 2024 if he's healthy. He's got some help at linebacker. They had Raymond Scott from Fresno State. I think that'll help a bit. Trent Hendrick returns. So they have some options at linebacker, but Dobbs is sort of the guy there I would expect in 24. Outside of that, the Dukes have some other key players. Terrence Spence, a defensive back transfer from Holy Cross, who has a chance to play. They've added some other key players at various positions. George Pettaway, a running back from North Carolina, has a chance to be impactful. Multiple offensive linemen. There's a lot of names there and guys there who have a chance to compete early. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dukes look for more receiver help and defensive back help in the spring transfer portal window, which opens in mid-April. I would expect that given the youth and inexperience there's certainly the possibility that some of those young guys impress during spring ball and get the nod as potential starters for 2024. But given the rest of JMU's roster, where you return a quality quarterback, you've got a running back that you should like, multiple running backs you should like, a defense that seems like it could come together nicely. I think JMU is going to view itself like a college football playoff contender with the field going to 12 teams. One group of 5 team is going to be guaranteed access to that. If JMU is contending for that, I'm not sure how confident Chesney and the other coaches will be in leaning on so many freshmen and sophomores, potentially at receiver and in the secondary. So would not be surprised if when that spring portal window opens, the Dukes look for some veteran help in the secondary and a wide receiver. But right now, transfer portal class stands at 21 people. I think you're looking at least a dozen that have a chance to start or compete for starting roles. It was a productive transfer portal class, and the Dukes needed it because they lost a ton. So Bob Chesney has the Dukes reloading, as fans like to say, rather than rebuilding, but there's still a couple roster questions. Fortunately for the Dukes, I think they've added at least 5 guys who have a chance to be immediate starters and potentially be all Sun Belt players. And Dylan Morris at quarterback, Iowa Dei at running back, Cam Ross at receiver, Eric ONeal at defensive end, and Jacob Dobbs at linebacker.